Two of our guests will join us in just a little while. And as they do that, as they're coming to join us this morning, where are we? You know, just looking at the pulse and saying, okay, so this is the pulse. This is where it was beating a couple of days before. And here we are then having seen, unfortunately, more death. Does it leave this difficult umbrella that's hanging over people this morning? And should we then ask the question in terms of what is going on when it then comes to moving forward in the nation today?
Well, in terms of moving the nation forward and all these conversations that we're talking about. Oh, first, KTN is back.
Mm-hmm. We're back, baby, like we never left.
So KTN is back, NTV is back on air. We know what happened yesterday. Yeah. But, looking at the whole anniversary yesterday, and there was this call, and what was going to be unique in a way, going beyond, the young people coming out to, remember their fallen heroes and obviously continue the agitation for the changes, is the solemn remembrance from the mothers. And the plan was the mothers who lost their children, their sons and their daughters, were planning to lay flowers where their kin were killed. That is outside Parliament, on the other adjacent areas. But they were met by a razor wire and police. The families which lost loved ones in the June 25th, 2024 protest had gathered on Kimathi Street yesterday. So they gathered around Kimathi Street and they began marching towards Moi Avenue to lay the flowers at the spot where the first victim of the anti-government protest, Rex Masai, was also shot. However, they were forced to scamper for safety after police fired tear gas canisters at them. And there was a friend who was outside Central Police where there was another crowd that gathered there yesterday, and we were all watching this on screens. And they went to Central and the crowd was gathering, but you had the gates closed, but you had an engagement with the officers. So at least we started seeing some signs. And these officers were talking to these young people who were chanting and, and a police vehicle passed behind them, and an officer just decides to fire up a tear gas canister. Then everybody starts running. And you're thinking, was that really necessary? So it almost appeared yesterday when Kalonzo, Eugene, and the rest of that group was going to lay their flowers along Parliament Road, that there was going to be some semblance of restraint and it was going to be peaceful. And I think yesterday you kept saying, I have a bad feeling about today. You remember? You kept saying I have a bad feeling about today. And it almost felt like maybe you might see something different. Then suddenly things just started changing. So you're looking at the different groups that were going to the streets yesterday. A lot of businesses, because this also needs to be mentioned, businesses were affected.
They were.
And there was a point I saw River Road and some buildings there. I didn't see police around there, but what I saw was goons with hacksaws cutting padlocks, stealing with reckless abandon, and it was free for all. And it's that reminder again that things can quickly escalate, but we still go to the same blame game. These protesters are violent. See what they did. How do you then define the peaceful protesters from the goons who were unleashed? The WhatsApp groups that the Standard exposed, and they were planning how to, let these people get onto the streets. We saw all that, and so the culmination of what we saw yesterday was not really surprising. But what was a bit surprising was also this was not just around CBD in Nairobi.
No,
it was in all parts of the country. Well, most parts of the country.
Yeah. So as you talk about the women the mothers who came yesterday to just commemorate their children, there is this quote from Jacinta Anyango, who said, "I carried rose flowers and came to commemorate with my son who was brutally killed by the same police. We had gathered and were ready to march, but same police officers threw tear gas at us. I hadn't even wiped my tears before they threw tear gas at us. What kind of country does this? What kind of a country does this to a mourning mother?" And we have Munyao, Rex's Masai's mother, had this to say: Why are they treating us like criminals? Is this the way the state plans to repay us?
You have to ask yourself questions then when it comes to progressive government or progressive nationalism. That are some of these tactics that have been employed, hiding from the real situation.
Yeah.
And then we saw things successively yesterday, and they're not new to protests. But then you have to ask the question: is that what is the back end? What's happening in the back end that you would want to shut down? A protest. Why would you want to then shut down? What is the will and the right of the people to then come out and speak? And that we see the introduction of these elements, because you cannot tell me. You could try, but you can't convince. It would be difficult to convince that the rogue elements which we saw, which were there, you can't tell me that the folks who came out in peaceful protest, or those who came to commemorate their loved ones, or those who came out in the memory of those who died yesterday, is the same stock and character and breed of people that we saw pulling off the coat of arms on the law courts in Kikuyu. Or that we saw with machetes breaking down padlocks on the businesses of people who count on them for a living in the city. You can't tell me that it is the same stock of people who then went to say, we need to remember and hope for a better Kenya. It to be very, very difficult to convince that it is the same kind of people. Yeah. But what for me then lands this plane is that it is very influenced. It's very easy to influence a hungry man to behave in a certain way. It is very easy to influence a desperate man or woman or young person to behave in a certain way. And the same issue, the same issues that people are coming to protest about is the same issue then that makes it easy for you to give 50, 200, 1,000 shillings to somebody to then come and disrupt things. I don't know if you're hearing what I'm saying.
Yes.
Exactly, yes.
It's the same issue. It's the same desperation that I can say, here's 1,000 shillings, go and cause mayhem amongst these people who are protesting. It is the same problem that the people who are protesting are saying, we have got to do better. It's the same reason. It's because this person cannot find a job. It's because this person is desperate to within an inch of their life to get something to eat on that day. It's because this person cannot get access to capital to then be able to do a business. It's because they've not been able to pay their rent. It's because in a certain time, they've had to sleep outside and had a door locked because they've not been able to make their rent. So we are using the currency of desperation to buy on both sides. And I'm saying at this point, if we don't stop and look very clearly at what is happening here, we're not going to be able to solve this issue. There will be a protest tomorrow. There will be one the day after. It will continue until you solve the problem. And if we can't see that we are cashing in the same currency on one side and on the other side, then we have an even bigger problem than we are imagining. We are cashing in the same currency, but we are buying different products. We are purchasing a different product, but the currency is the same. Unfortunately, the currency is the same, and we can't see that the goon who is bringing down this thing to cause mayhem because he's been given 1,000 bob or 2,000 shillings is suffering the same thing that the person on this side is saying, come on, government, you got to do better.
The reason why they will take 1,000 shillings, because I had a conversation yesterday where someone was saying, and I was just probing the whole idea of I am a gun for hire, is when you render a population jobless, when you tell them you can go to school, get an education with a promise that at least you'll get a job, you'll land somewhere, or you'll find an opportunity. If you don't find employment, you've got brilliant ideas, you are very creative, meaning that you have a safe space where you can explore your creativity and manifest what's in your mind. But again, when you get into that space, you're told it's almost like you're criminalized for having ideas. You're criminalized for executing those same ideas because you're not being given an enabling environment to exercise it. When you push this person and their backs against the wall, what you end up having is somebody who is willing to die for anything and at any time.
Yeah.
Meaning, if you come and you're saying, here, I'm going to give you 1,000 shillings, I want you to go break into that shop. You will not think twice, because if you refuse, somebody else will be given that 1,000. So you don't have that 1,000 in your pocket. So if somebody else now comes again and says, hey, I'm going to give you 1,000 shillings, carry this flag, go to town, you will still do it. So they're not acting on these things because they are believing in a cause, or they believe that robbing people or going to injure people is a cause. They're just doing it because their guns fire. And for the longest time, what the political class in this country has always done is be in that space that you're talking about, where you imagine and assume it's business as usual. You can play tribal politics and you think we're in a generation where you can easily get away with that. These guys don't care about tribe. The conversation around tribe is not there. It is in the minds of these people who are still pushing it so that it is this tribe against that tribe. There is an economic equalizer here.
Yes.
So if you are Luo, you are Kisi, you are Kalenjin, you are Luya, you are Kamba, you don't have a job, it has nothing necessarily to do with your tribe. It has everything to do with you've not been given enough space or conditions to work. And therefore, what you end up then having is this situation where you have 1,000 people, 2,000 people who are desperate. They have nothing. I mean, look at the rallies that we've always had. Where do they get these numbers? On Monday at 10 in the morning. Where do they get these numbers? On Tuesday at 2 p.m. They are available. They can come from wherever. They're available because they expect tokens. And the politics of tokenism is another whole subject, because that's how the playbook has always been, is go to the women in the villages. What do those women in the villages want? They want shelters or in the market places. They want money to buy groceries to sell. What do vijana wanataka nini? Wanataka boda boda. Wanataka hizo boda boda. They need a shelter. So that's why you'll find a simple shelter might cost even 5 million. A shelter that will not cost more than 20,000 will have a budget of $1 million. And it will have the name of the politician to basically shelter around 15 to 20 border borders. And it almost looks like this is such a big achievement. So I've helped you guys. It's actually a favor I'm doing, that I've come to you to put this shelter for you. And that lack of demand for the longest time has led the politicians to believe you can get away with the politics of tokenism, you can get away with lacking accountability, you can get away with impunity, and now you can get goons, put people at loggerheads so that it looks it's a fight among these people. Look, they are clueless. Yes, they are saying they're tribeless, they're partyless, but they're also clueless. So there's a narrative that is pushed so that it looks like these people, you release them, it's chaos.
You know, one told me yesterday, I have nothing to lose. I'm going to the streets because I've gone to school, I have my degree, I'm an engineer by profession, but I'm in an Uber business because the government has not provided an adequate environment for me to be able to ply my trade. I'm going to park my car, go to the streets, and make sure that justice is done by me. Those as well that are being paid, it's because I have no other option. I have to eat. If I'm given 1,000 bob, I'm gonna take it, because if not, how do I survive the day?
Those are the questions, and that is the reality. Joining us now as we get into the last part of this conversation, Wajiru is an activist and co-founder of the Mathare Social Justice Centre, and joins us this morning with Bob Njagi, who's the chairperson of the Free Kenya movement. Good morning to you both.
Good morning to you.
Good morning, Joe.
How are you doing?
All right.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Karibu sana to both of you. I mean, the last part of this conversation that we have this morning, we're glad that you made it at this time. And we're just doing a pulse check, essentially, post June 25th, where it was to be a memorial, where it came out to remember people, but then also to remember the message that is coming out to the government of the day. And we're just going to jump into the conversation now, as we do a pulse check on after the fact of what happened yesterday. Where are we now, Wajira?
We are even more angry than we were yesterday. We're even more angry than we were last year. We are even more determined to have this government leave this country. I think the Kenyan people fired the president yesterday. I think it was very loud and clear that Ruto has lost legitimacy to lead the people. I think it was very clear that the young people of this nation will not tolerate a government that not only steals from them, but also kills them. It was a protest against police brutality that ended up in more Kenyans being killed, that ended up in more brutality, that ended up in media stations being denied coverage. This is a dictatorship, and the young people are saying, no, we have a constitution. We are demanding that this constitution is implemented. We are demanding that rights. We refuse to normalize police brutality. We refuse to normalize death in our country by the bullet. We refuse to normalize murders by the police. We refuse to normalize institutions being given money that do not do the work they are supposed to do. We refuse to normalize a dictatorship. We refuse to normalize poverty, hopelessness, joblessness in a country of abundance. The National Intelligence Service has been given an upwards of 12 more billion from the 46 billion it had last year. This is outrageous. We are not at war in this country. We are not giving money to healthcare. We are not giving money to education. We are not giving money to the people. Why is the government being so wasteful upon taxing Kenyans who are already having it hard? This is why everybody that cared about justice, that cared about a better country, came out yesterday, and this is not the end of it. I think as young people, we are feeling like we want to see this to the very end. We want to keep demanding that justice is served and that Ruto goes, because he has had 365 days to show Kenyans I have heard you, to show Kenyans that I care, to show Kenyans that I am going to uphold the constitution. But what did we get? More repression, more murders, more theft, more advisors, more disregard for the people, the constitution, human rights, the law. As young people, we keep saying Ruto must go.
Bob, you're wearing a beret, Free Kenya. This is coming 1 year. We're seeing 1 year later commemoration of those who died, and one would have hoped that the police would have behaved better. I mean, as we sit here today, is Kenya free? Are we better as compared to last year?
First, I want to say that I'm very sorry for the people who lost their lives yesterday. I'm very sorry for the people who lost their lives yesterday. It was totally uncalled for. It shows the excesses of police brutality that we are facing in this country. What we are coming to an awakening is that the police is actually a tool that is being used to oppress the people of Kenya. And it has come a time when we have to look at how to restructure the entire system and structure of what we're calling the security sector and apparatus in this country. As we are doing other reforms in the country, I think one of the major reforms we have to look at is the security sector reforms. How do we reform this sector that is so abusive and extractive and, to the people? You know, it is a colonial system that we've inherited since we got independence. We have been reforming other sectors like the judiciary. We have been reforming making constitutional reforms, but never have we done serious police reforms. And this is just a testament as to the depth of which we have a problem in this society, where the police has become the public enemy number one of the people. You know, they're murdering their own brothers and sisters in plain sight of cameras. You know, where are they suspending the constitution? They are supposed to be the people who enforce the law, not who break the law. So we are having a breakdown in the systems of the society. That is essentially what is happening, is that we are moving towards anarchy, where the police who are meant to uphold the law are the ones breaking the law day by day, shooting people, and there is nobody to hold them to account. IPOA, which is an institution that is meant to keep them to account by investigating and prosecuting them, does not have the teeth to bite. That is a systemic failure. So it's actually designed to fail, so that the police can continue to kill without having been held to account. My sister has just talked about how much budgets they've been given. You know, we're actually budgeting for the extrajudicial killings in our country without anybody being held to account. So what we are saying is that people have had enough of this. It cannot go on. the system has broken down as it is, all right? And we have no confidence in the government as it is designed. For starters, as we speak, the Inspector General of Police, the CS Interior Murkomen, the Deputy Inspector General of Police, Lagat, should not be in office as we speak. That should be a bare irreducible minimum. What I thank the Gen Zs for doing is they came out against a very brutal police force yesterday, and the whole world witnessed what happened. That is all I can say for now.
Bob, you've started your conversation very well on security sector reforms, but we've had this conversation of police reforms for a very, very long time. Just the most recent, in terms of the reform agenda within the Kenya Police Service, is the Maraga-led task force that was appointed by President William Ruto. All right, and the police reforms task force, the role was, number one, it was actually, the full name was Presidential Task Force on the Improvement of Terms and Conditions of Service and Other Reforms for Members of the National Police Service and Kenya Prison Service. So they were combining the two. Their mandate was to review police and prison officers' welfare. Number two was to assess working conditions and institutional culture, because we've always talked about the culture within the police service. Then number three, the most important one now, referencing to our discussion, is recommending reforms for training and career progression, promotions, deployment, but disciplinary grievance handling systems. Number four, suggesting structural reforms, the independence, professionalism, and accountability. Then the last one is address public complaints and the perception of impunity in the security sector. The Maraga task force did this. They presented the report, although the issue went to court. Is the issue really, because on paper, we've got really good documents that talk about police reforms. Is the problem the conversation about reforms and documenting, or is the problem the enforcement of these reports?
It both comes both in enforcement of the reports are done, yes, but they're shelved, okay? There is no implementation done. But even further to that, I think that kind of a task force failed totally to respond to the needs of the society. You know, we are looking at a public that is being oppressed by the police on a daily basis. They are collecting bribes from the public on a daily basis, not just during the demonstrations. In the neighborhoods, we have a very oppressive system called the police, the office of the president, the most corrupt, department in government. So we're looking at something bigger than Maraga. This is something that we need to shut down the country and recalibrate this system. Otherwise, we are not going to survive the post-colonial era. We have to get out of this. And the time has come. And that's what the Gen Zs are saying. And people are not listening to them until now. The message is not getting home. It will take a revolution of what you guys expect. I think it's time that we have a serious conversation about this issue of extrajudicial killings. I'm a victim of abductions, I went through it for 32 days, all right? It's the security system that abducted me. I was with the spokesperson for the police the other day before the demonstrations on 24th on TV, and he promised that the police are going to conduct themselves with a lot of restraint. But what we saw was the opposite. They actually mobilized the police to come and stop people from gathering and assembling, Article 37, the right to freedom of picketing. So that's what we are saying, that we cannot continue this way. It cannot go on.
Wanjira, as we continue with freedom of demonstration, right to be heard, and all this, and how police are conducting themselves, especially around protests, one would form a conclusion that everything that is being said or the demands that are being made out there fall on deaf ears. So how do we move forward from that? That's
very true. I think we can see that they have refused to listen to the people of Kenya. They have decided to disregard the sovereignty of the Kenyan people, to disregard what it is that the Kenyan people are saying. And I think how we're going to move from that is assert our sovereignty as the people of Kenya. I think we need to set a transitional committee that will take over the functioning of the government. in terms of upholding human rights, in terms of another IEBC, because the young people have even been refused to be given ideas to decide their future for themselves. I think a lot of things need to be changed, and it is going to take everybody in the Republic right now to stand in defense of the Republic of Kenya, of the sovereignty of the Kenyan people. At this particular point, it feels like it's the people versus the political class. Yeah.
Wanjira, how? And I think this is a difficult conversation to have.
It is.
But it is necessary to have it.
Extremely necessary.
Because we say that there's something wrong. This is where we've come from. There's something wrong, obviously, because it has been displaying itself in very many ways. And it's all culminated then in the protests that we see. And then, in between that, not just on the 25th of June 2024, but sporadic ones that happened before. And then we see again what happened yesterday, which the testament of, here that we're seeing that we still see some of the things that happened brutally that still continue. But if we are going to get to the point where we're at the precipice of having that conversation and saying things must change, certain things need to happen, certain processes need to take place. How do they happen? What needs to happen? Do people need to sit in a boardroom? We heard yesterday over and over again that there needs to be a combination of street revolution and boardroom policy. There needs that to happen. Does there need to be somebody in the room when we are saying that this revolution is happening on the street, and somebody will call you and say, okay, guys, how are we going to go about this? Does that need to happen?
I think just to come in at that point is where, as a movement, the Free Kenya movement, since 2018, we have been on a path of a popular initiative, a referendum, because a referendum provides a platform for all Kenyans to come together to look at the issues that are bedeviling the society and to fundamentally address those issues through a constitutional review process. In my view and in our view as the Free Kenya movement, there are two ways to go about it: either a popular uprising, which is a revolution, or a popular initiative, which is a referendum. And a referendum is an organized revolution. It's a revolution through the constitution. And that's one avenue that I'd like to invite even the young people to pick up this moment, that we can collect 1 million signatures. If we can raise 10 million shillings in a day, how about raising 1 million signatures to put together the country towards a mood of what you're calling a people's dialogue, whereby the civil society will come on board, the social justice movements will come on board with their issues, because you have a lot of issues for gender, for youth, for inclusivity, issues regarding devolution. Those are issues that we cannot resolve on the streets by demonstrations. We have to come to a point whereby we now converge the street protests with now the boardroom, which is now a people's convention at a Bomas kind of setting, where we can have sober engagements about these issues, about security. We cannot talk about these issues in the studio and on the streets and then leave it at that. That's why we keep coming back to the streets, because we don't come to a point of resolving the problem. And our direction as a movement, and I hope Kenyans who are listening to this can check our website, www.freekenya.co.ke. You can just check the website, look at the issues that we stand for, and sign online. If we get 1 million signatures within a week, we can push this country into a conversation such as what we are discussing. Otherwise, we shall keep going back on the streets year after year. All right? So our direction is that. And unfortunately, if we don't come up as a people to use Article 1 and Article 257, which is provided for in the Constitution as one of the ways we can express our sovereignty directly through a referendum, because we're going to make the laws ourselves as a people, then it means the NADCO referendum is coming up soon. They're coming up with a referendum, which is a government-backed referendum through the NADCO report. So in a very short time, they're going to pass 2/3 majority in both houses, the Senate and the National Assembly. And then you have the new IBC in place, being pushed towards a referendum that is actually dictating to advance the interest of the political elite.
Okay,
so then does that need to happen then, Wanjira?
So to stop that,
I'd like to weigh in on that, Bob.
Sure.
Where we're standing as young people right now, there's no particular institution we're having faith in, not even the IEBC that is going to oversee the referendum that you propose. So we are in favor of a parallel event where we are on the streets and there's a transitional council backed by the people that is comprising of all of the progressive forces in this country, comprising of the social movements, of progressive political parties, of movements such as yourself,
Correct.
of the professional bodies,
Right.
of the representatives of organized groups, the religious institutions, the presidents of the Law Society of Kenya, the former judicial chief justices in the country, so that we are talking as the people are backing up this transitional committee to take over not only governance but constitutional matters. We cannot reverse. We don't believe in any kind of reforms because we've been at it. For the past 10 years, we've been talking about police reforms. We've been talking about an end to extrajudicial killings. We've been talking about an end to corruption. We have gotten to a point where we are done talking. We need actions now. We need to take matters into our own hands as the sovereign people of Kenya. Things cannot go back like yesterday did not happen. Things cannot go back like more people did not die. Like women were not raped in this country.
I agree partly with her in the sense, that's why I said there are two options. We can have a popular uprising, that's what she's saying, or a popular initiative whereby, you see, when you go the popular uprising way and we remove Ruto, fine, we're going to remove him. Who is going to elect this transitional council? How are we going to have faith it's you or it's that? It will create another, again, situation which we are not very sure about how it will end up. You know, we could end up the South Sudan way. Let's be practical. Unless you can give us a very clear roadmap as to how we can get that
this is my proposal.
I'm not discrediting that, but
I just don't want you to say we could end up the Sudan way because that's the government propaganda and it's not true. Kenyan people love their country. We are not interested in destroying this country.
I agree with you, Wanjira. What I'm saying is that there are two options. Let's use both options, right? What is wrong with organizing ourselves and getting 1 million signatures? It's one of the ways.
IEBC is the problem because where are you taking the signatures? Who's heading this IEBC?
I almost hear, and I think this is the direction the question is.
But we have a problem with the IEBC. We have a petition as Free Kenya Movement.
Just a minute, Bob, on that.
Against the selection panel.
This is the question in the direction in which we are going.
Yeah.
And that I almost hear Bob saying, and I want to hear if this is it, because Wanjira says we've been talking. To have a conversation, to sit down around a table, we've been having a conversation. We've been saying it. A conversation that has happened for the longest time. Bob seems to be going in the direction where you say folks have to sit around a table and agree. There needs to be somebody
including the Gen Zs. There needs to
including
the Gen Zs.
Hang on. Yeah. There needs to be somebody who is representative of a body to take the lead and sit. Yeah. Seems to be what Bob is saying.
We have a civilized society, yes.
Wait a minute, Bob.
Okay.
Is that the direction that this then should take, in your opinion? That where we have the mushrooming of ideas, and it's not just the mushrooming, it's a loud, concerted voice. Do we need to have a representative of this body at a table saying, unless we have a conversation onto action, we are back in the streets?
A single representative?
No.
10. 100, but somebody. Is that necessary?
I think what we are agreeing, all of us, is that we need some sort of leadership. We need leadership from the people, by the people, for the people. How we arrive at that is what we need to figure out together. And my proposal is having the organized people's groups that are already there, because the people are organized, to come into a council, a People's Transitional Council that is backed by also the Gen Zs have to be represented, the mothers of victims have to be represented, the teachers have to be represented, the workers have to be represented, the activists and social movements have to be represented. A people's convention. A people's convention. Yes. And this must not revolve around a single individual. This has to be a people's-led process towards birthing a new republic, because the old Kenya is dead. That Kenya is dead to us. The Kenya where you kill people aimlessly is dead. The Kenya where you steal our monies and have no repercussions is dead. The Kenya where police abuse us like that is dead to us as young people. So we are in the process of birthing another republic. And this one, we are welcoming every progressive Kenyan, every patriotic Kenyan to partake in this process.
Wanjira, there's been this question. I hear what both of you are saying. Bob, what he's suggesting, there's a way all this can merge and synergized. However, there's an argument that there's no legal basis for a transitional council to get the president out there. The Kenya Constitution, because we have to, again, all of us go through the Constitution, correct?
I completely agree.
So the Constitution currently, as it is, only stipulates two lawful ways to remove a sitting president, either by impeachment by a parliament, and even in that impeachment, it has to be either due to gross violation of the Constitution or serious misconduct. That's number one. Number two is by electoral defeat, which will be a general election in 2027. So a parallel or an extra constitutional transitional council, in quotes from what I hear you say, would then be illegal and unconstitutional. How will you go about that?
Number one, I don't know how you interpret all sovereign power belongs to the people of Kenya. I do not know how you interpret it.
It's described in the Constitution.
How do you, and we exercise our power directly or indirectly. In the event that the person we have donated our power to abuses it, uses it to kill Kenyans, uses it to steal from Kenyans, we take back our power. That becomes an illegitimate government. That becomes a government that is anti the people of Kenya. So we take back our power. Sometimes we have to act in the best interest of the country, even though it is not what how to remove a president is stipulated. We are sitting in Article 1 of the Kenyan Constitution, which gives us all sovereign power to act in the best interest of the country. And this is what I feel is the most appropriate, most patriotic way to go as at now. Because the parliament has been hijacked by the president. They will not impeach him, even though there's enough evidence of gross violation of human rights, gross misconduct. And we are not going to go into an election where the IEBC commissioners have been elected by Ruto. We know how that is going to go. It could be worse for this country if we actually get there than where we are at right now.
One would ask the question, still tied with what Okari has asked now. It is a question of the Constitution, Article 1 has to be read with how then we remove the president, all that, the constitutionalism of how this process will be in place. But then again, in forming the transitional council, there has to be mechanism and powers and instruments that will go into place to operationalize this council. Where does this fall in the Constitution?
I think at that point is where I had an ideological disagreement with my comrades who were pushing for that. Because, at the same time, we're supposed to uphold the Constitution. We're actually defending the Constitution, even from ourselves, even from ourselves. Sometimes we might think we are the ones who are defending it, but we're the ones destroying it. The Constitution has stipulated a very clear process of removal of a presidency. And that's why for us as a Free Kenya movement, we realized that the framers of the Constitution left some gaps. Like there is no process for recall by the people, right? How can the people recall the president through this Constitution? Is there a place you can collect signatures to remove the president through a referendum? No. But what we can do is that we can enable that legislation through a referendum. And that's what we're proposing to do as a Free Kenya movement, is to enable that referendum process of where the people now in the future, when we feel aggrieved by the president, we can collect 1 million signatures and say we want to remove the president, and we go to a vote. All right? But at the moment, there is no that process in the Constitution. So what they're saying is that we go and remove this president because we are dissatisfied. Yes, I'm very dissatisfied. I wish he would be out as soon as yesterday. But I still have to use the same Constitution to remove him. And that's where our hands are tied,
Our hands tied?
I don't feel like our hands are tied.
Okay, so let's. So if what Bob is saying is that here there is no clear path. If the people are clearly disappointed with how the president is working and say, well, we need an option to be able to remove him, according to the Constitution, which then folks are bound to uphold and protect, doesn't give you a way out. Right? But it does give you a process through which something can then be done. Bob is saying use that process. And also on this side, Wanjira is saying, we can't continue to be in the same situation that we have been and complained about for the longest time. But I also don't hear you saying that there's an aversion to process.
And this is the thing.
And I want to hear what Wanjira is saying
I think
about that.
my only problem with Bob's proposal is where it ends up.
Okay.
We could do that. We could totally do that. We could totally collect all the signatures. Where are we taking these signatures to?
Because what you're
who
saying
is making the final decision?
This is
People
what
who
I think.
are
Let me answer that.
anti-people.
Let me answer that, because that's a question I normally get often.
And I want to hear what Wanjira's
Okay.
solution is here in terms of, so there is a problem because the systemized mismanagement, the systemized corruption, the systemized and systemic impunity amongst these institutions for which these processes should essentially follow, that's the problem.
That's the problem.
So where or are we in the place where we're saying we don't know, which is okay? Are we in a place where we're saying we don't know, Wanjira?
I think we are in a place where we have never been here as a country. We are in a historic moment in this country. We are in a place where the collective intellect of Kenyans is needed, and we are proposing. I, for one, and I feel very many Kenyans have lost faith in our institutions, Bob, and for good reasons. Our institutions have failed us. So we cannot run to those very institutions to salvage us from where we are at. I think that the people who did the Constitution were very right by asserting that all sovereign power belongs to the people of Kenya, such that in the event our institutions fail, we can collect our power. The thing is, we have to be very organized, and I think we are organized. You've been in the civic space, you've been in the political space, you've seen people are organized in different functions. Coming together is not going to be so difficult. We are all interested in a better country. That's the core of our coming together. We just need the backing of the Kenyan people, and we saw yesterday that the Kenyan people are tired of this regime.
But Wanjira, I will disagree to some degree. I hear what Bob is saying and where he's coming from. What you're quoting, you say if then we're defending the Constitution, we have to interpret that same Constitution that we want to defend in agitating for what you're looking for. What you're referring to, Chapter 1, Article 1, that everybody keeps talking about, it says, so all sovereign power belongs to the people of Kenya,
yes.
Correct. But what you're also not saying, it also continues and says, and shall be exercised only in accordance with the Constitution.
Yes.
That's what it says. Then it says, part 2, the people may exercise their sovereign power either directly or through their democratically elected representatives. It continues to state the organs that under that Constitution, within still the same article, where they rest. You're talking about Parliament, the National Executive. Now, when you are referring to all sovereign power belongs to the people, then what it means is the ultimate power to govern Kenya belongs to the people, you're right. But, and this is very important, that power must be then used within the limits and the processes set by the Constitution. And that's when we still go back to the same question. If we want the president out, we're going to the streets to protest. Then what next? Because there is a process to getting him out, which is still under the same Constitution.
This process will not help us get him out. And the Constitution is a living document. It is not cast on stone. It can guide us where it needs to be rectified in future.
So if you can't get him through an impeachment through Parliament, or you can't wait for the general election, how do you then suggest we go about this? How? This transitional council, how do you even establish it?
And where does it fall?
But I have said it time and time again, guys. I have said it time and time again.
No, don't get tired of saying it. It's important.
I have said
yes.
the Kenyan people are organized in different factions, and they have leadership. The Kenyan youths have showed us that they are not going to stand this regime any longer. 2027 is too far. Our lives are on the line. We are dying like we don't matter in our own homeland. So I think a parallel of those events where this transitional council is a people's transitional council backed by the people, representative of all the peoples, the diversity of the Kenyan people in all its facets. That will be my proposal, unless there's another proposal that could take us there, because we want to get out of this.
I think we're speaking the same language in two different ways, and I want ours to come together ideological, because if me and her don't come together, then it means Kenya does not heal, because we come from different backgrounds, even different generations, all right? So we need to come together, because if I don't come together with her, it means Kenyans will not come together. And this is where I want us to meet at this point, that she says that we need to have that council. I agree. But how do we bring this council through the Constitution is that we we first raise 1 million signatures. In fact, we can do 3 million. I know together we can even do
more than
5.
3 million.
Okay? So what will happen, once we have these 5 million signatures, we shall now create the platform for that council to come into place. Because we have...
Okay, so...
let me explain to you how it happens constitutionally. And that's the route we took. We collect the 1 million signatures first. Once we have the e-log as our partners who can verify the signatures are legit even before we take them to IBC. So as we are verifying the signatures, we have that convention at Bomas led by now the civil society, all those guys, okay? And we look at the draft bill that we say, this is the problem here. And this is what we want to fix, this we don't want to fix. And you see this, once the draft bill is already finished, it will be taken now to IBC together with those 5 million signatures, all right? Now, this will be taken to the people.
IBC?
Correct. Don't worry about it. Yes, we don't have perfect systems, but we have to work within those systems to perfect them. We don't throw the baby together with the bathwater.
So what is this bill about?
The bill is about how we can put the voice of the people at the center of governance in this country. Number one, we're talking about, and those are the issues. The issues that you have, it's what now you will come and say, as young people, we want to be included in this government. Like, for instance, we are proposing to have youth representatives in the new electoral cycle. Instead of like the way you have women reps, okay? Now we'll have youth reps. So like you don't need to compete with Bob on the same seat for Madare. No. You have a special seat for youth as Gen Zs. In every county, we'll have a youth Gen Z, just as a women going to the parliament now to discuss issues of young people inside parliament as an affirmative action, just like the way we have affirmative action for gender. All right, those are some of the proposals we have. It will take time for you to look at them. Don't analyze it now. I'm just giving you a proposal of what you can bring to the table to represent for the youth. Instead of going to the streets.
No, I don't think that's where we're coming from. Because young people need to take leadership in this country.
We are at a point where all these discussions we're having, the discussions we're having here calls even more for the need for everybody to sit on the table and agree on the way forward.
This is the thing, and this is.
But how do you do it through the constitution? Is through,
because then again there is there's what you're raising, Wanjira, which is legitimate. There's what Bob is raising, legitimate, and all these voices, including other parties, need to sit and agree on the way forward. Because if everyone is pulling on their side, Wasahili Sema, if everyone is pulling on their side, the center will tear.
Let's open up what Wanjira is saying here and give you an opportunity to really then bring it out. Because I hear very clearly what you're saying. That the Constitution has given you certain rights to do certain things. Because this is a supreme law. Essentially, it's what delivers that for you. That under its umbrella, then you know how you're able and allowed to operate, right?
Yes.
Now, one of the institutions constitutionally that allows you to give life to this thing that Bob is saying is the IEBC.
Yes.
All right?
Yes.
Now, if what I'm hearing you say is correct, obviously we're going to extend this conversation a little bit because it's necessary that we do pass the hour. A system which, according to you, is already flawed,
yes,
can then not be the midwife,
yes,
for this new baby,
yes,
that we are talking about, because the waters are already sullied, right?
Yes.
Now, in that case, where the Constitution has said it is this institution which will do this thing that you want to bring about a renaissance, what do we do?
We take back our power. I don't know why we don't see that the Constitution has already dictated that in the event of such a possibility, that the institutions that have been mandated by the people to work in their best interest fail, then this power should be taken back by the people of Kenya, because they are the sovereign citizens of the country. What do we understand by sovereign citizens of the country? That we consent, we decide everything that happens within the Republic of Kenya as the Kenyan people. This is why we vote for a president, because we give you the power to govern us. So in the event this fails, we take back our sovereignty as the people.
How do you take it back?
How we take back our sovereignty as the people is through the organized institutions of the people, not.
Now,
just a moment, Bob. Okay, Wanjira. Maybe you can make me understand it better.
Yeah.
From where I sit, because I still want us to go back to the same constitution that we are defending.
Yes.
And we are taking power. So sovereign power, these constitutions can be exercised in two ways. whether you're organizing or not, if you organize all these groups that you've just talked about, you can organize, and you're still within the law to do so. But after you've organized, now how you channel the process, the Constitution tells you have sovereign power. You can exercise it directly or indirectly. Now, if it's directly, it means through a referendum and public participation, which you've just said that is what you can organize.
Yeah.
Now, indirectly is through elected leaders, that is in parliament. Now, in relation to removing the head of state and by extension the government in place, is directly, the people then can call for a referendum that changes the aspects of the presidency, the functions and all that. Indirectly, it means it's putting pressure or a petition through parliament in a referendum. Those are the only two ways,
I think,
in the Constitution.
I think the first task of this transitional council will be the reconstitution of the IEBC so that we can move. We can move your way. We can collect signatures. We can move so that we have real mandate from the people of Kenya, official from the signatures. But this new IEBC is what we need right now. In fact, the president violated the court orders to not form an IEBC. So that is an illegal IEBC already. So we do not have an IEBC from where we stand as the people of Kenya. So the first task of the transitional council would be the election of new IEBC officials that will then take over the collection of signatures, a referendum, or new elections.
Okay. From what I hear you saying, that institutional integrity here is extremely important.
Yes.
Because there are two, one of them being Parliament. Again, I'm going back to the IEBC. And in order for us to have a process, because it's a bit crazy, but the Constitution did not envision, or maybe the makers of the Constitution did not envision a place whereby the sentiment in a large percentage would be that these institutions then don't carry the Constitution integrity that they require to have some of these things done. These two that you've talked about today. So I hear you saying that in the process, that there needs to be a deconstruction of these institutions first for the process that Bob is talking about to take place.
Yes, 100%. You got it correct, 100%. So Bob, your idea is good, but we cannot go through with it in the current system as is. We have to reform, we have to dismantle the IEBC and form a new one, which must be a people-led initiative, because that's the institution that decides power. That's the institution that upholds the decision of the Kenyan people.
I agree with you, Wanjira. I'm so in the same, we're in the same boat, where we want the same outcome, but the approach is what is different. Okay? And what you're saying is what we can do as well, and it can be done, you know. I mean, we've been doing it. We can remove these guys from power even tomorrow if we want to. You know, you put the energy in it, you know. Like, my worry is that, for instance, how to do that, if you want a popular uprising, is that the Constitution gives us Article 37, like what we did yesterday, right? We can decide every Wednesday, every Wednesday we are coming back, every Wednesday, until this government steps down, all of them. Ruto must go. Si ndio hivyo unataka? Tutaenda hivyo tutaenda. Na unajua tutamtoa. Lakini saa shida ni mimi naogopa. Tukimtoa hii transitional council ni akina nani hao? Si ni wale tu wanakujanga tu ku hijack processes za watu wengine wamepigania, then they come to sit there. You know, how are we going to elect that transitional council? Hapo ndo, and then another militia might come up again.
No, Bob, where are you getting those ideas?
You know, because
uko afraid. I hear what Bob is saying.
There's an organized revolution and there is a disorganized revolution.
So what Bob said,
both are revolutions.
Bob is coming from a fear point of hijacking and capture.
The process.
So like you can have these organizations.
Like what they're doing with the protest, they're infiltrating the protest. Yes, we are doing the right thing. Then they send goons because they have the money. They have the resources to pay the goons. They have the cars. They deploy the goons and infiltrate our protest so that we are going in the right direction. But now they know, oh, that's where you guys are going. They mobilize people to come and infiltrate. So what I'm saying is this. If we go that direction, we remove the Ruto steps down because of pressure. Sindio, how do we midwife that process now? That is where she's at.
I don't know why so.
And you see, the popular uprising is also our right. People can
Wanjira,
say...
what are you saying?
Yeah.
What is it?
I don't know. I hope the government is not after my neck. I'm receiving so many calls. But I'm being honest.
Yeah,
No,
you're right.
this is our honesty as the young people of this country. Our institutions have failed. We cannot trust them to lead us where we want. They cannot imagine the kind of republic we want for ourselves.
Wanjira, how do you address the trust deficit?
Yes.
Because I hear what Bob is saying. There's a trust issue, and from last year when the protests began around the finance bill, there are few of you that emerged like potential leaders of this movement, though it was leaderless, and we started seeing names dropping, people dropping, and then there's a whole trust issue on then who should front change, who should be the person who is like the spokesperson of the movement or spokespeople of the movement. How do you address this trust deficit issue? From where Bob is coming is all these groups that you're organizing, from the religious groups, from the civic society groups, human rights groups, and all these other groups to midwife this process in what you're referring to as a transitional government. How do you address the issue of trust?
I think let me just combine that in terms of vetting that process to ensure that the people he's afraid of are people who are clean for both of you.
The people who are clean for both of us.
What will be the
So
vetting
how
process?
I had imagined it in my head is these institutions, they give us a representative that they agree upon as the institution. They are fronted by their own institution. For example, the social justice movement fronts their two representatives that they have agreed upon as the people of the social justice movement. The religious institutions front their two representatives, or their two representatives, the Christians and the Muslim, that they have agreed upon. The political parties front their representatives that it's the power that is coming from the ground, from the people. It is the people deciding them, not the transitional council. People are fronted to go to this transitional council. And then they come together bearing the power of the people that have given them the mandate to come to the table.
Same language, different approach. As the Free Kenya movement, what we did, we realized that there is need to come up with a system and structure of governance that puts in place a structure for Article 1. Direct representation, okay? Because what we have is a structure of indirect representation since 1962. Both the county governments, the national governments are all arms of the indirect representation. So the drafters of the constitution never came up with a structure through which the people themselves how can you express your sovereignty directly in governance?
So what you're saying is amending.
We have developed a structure called the people's governments. People's governments is a new structure and system of governance that we want to bring through this referendum to and there's a sample of this in Makueni County where they had the Makueni People's Governments, where the same structure now, what she's saying, the people, the representatives, come from the village level to the ward level, to the cluster, to the constituency, and to the county. So what happens is this new system is the one that oversights both the county and the national government. Whenever funds and resources are channeled to the public, it is the people's governments to oversight these funds. So we are going to finish to fight corruption, kill it at the source. And that's how revolutionary that system is. But we still have to introduce it through the constitutional process. And that's why we're saying let's call for a people's dialogue.
On this point then, I hear very loudly what Wanjira is saying, that the process upon which we are going to do this is on institutions that are flawed. And that if that is not dealt with, we talk about systemic issues. We talk about systemic issues, Bob, that you've talked about through the police, for example. We talk about systemic issues over and over that have been used.
We had the 2010 constitution, one that we are speaking. Did we have it in vacuum, or we had it through we changed the constitution?
However,
but we used,
fine, let's
if you pour a liquid into a dirty cup,
it remains dirty.
Exactly.
Is that I don't know if
that's exactly what I'm saying.
And so the problem here is that how do we deal with the institutions that have been given the power to bring about these processes that are demanded by the Constitution if we have authenticity and integrity issues with those institutions. And I think that's where the problem is. So whereas there needs to be this drain the swamp thing that we've been talking about, the question is here, and I don't think that there's a problem having a question. There's no problem at the point saying, I don't know what to do, but we have to keep coming together to have that conversation. I don't think that there's a problem there. But if we know that across board there's integrity, there's accountability, there's management, there's governance, there's leadership issues, can we say, well, we know that there are issues within institutions, but because the Constitution says we must use that process, let's just go ahead and do it? Wouldn't we get the same result at the end of the day, no matter who was pushing the issue? Wouldn't we have the same result if we went through the same institutions? Wouldn't we?
We would.
I believe that there's always, we need to use the avenues provided in the Constitution and not say that let's try the process. If we fail, we shall have failed having tried.
Wanjira says no.
All right?
I disagree.
Yeah, for me, I would say we have not exhausted our options.
I disagree
yet.
because it will end up at the IBC,
if we get to
which
a point,
is an illegal
if we get to that point
already.
where IBC blocks us, then we go for the popular uprising. But we haven't given a chance to the organized revolution first before we can go for the uprising. If we have exhausted all avenues in the Constitution and failed, like if we went for a referendum and we got like what Ekuru Okot did, he collected signatures. They went to the county assemblies and they were shut down. Right? Even ours could happen the same fate. I'm not saying no. But if we get to that point, then at that point, then we can say there is no other alternative other than a popular uprising. But if there is another, it's like an appeal. When you have a chance of appealing,
Bob.
That's my case. That's
Bob, I just want you to answer me why you want to deal with an IBC, which is an illegal institution as we stand.
Let me tell you one thing. As Free Kenya Movement, we have actually challenged this constitution of this IBC. But again, I've used the same process.
So
we went to the High Court. We went to the High Court, and we have a hearing in July 16th to check whether the selection panel was validly nominated. And we trust that if that petition goes through, this IBC is going to be recalled, even if it has already been.
And then who's going to elect another IBC?
So at that point is when we can come to that question of how do the people come together.
No, I honestly think.
But at this point, they have already been passed. You know, the thing is this. The risk is this. For me, a bird in hand is worth two in the bushes. As we speak, the process has been passed by Parliament. Our petition could be dismissed. So if I bank on our petition to drop IBC and it is dismissed, okay, then these guys are sworn in and they continue. They'd rather have our referendum on the table saying that now you've come in, here are the signatures for Gen Zs. Okay? And they want change. And then if now that fails, if the new IBC fails to either pass the signatures, okay, because they can do what they did to Okoa Kenya and decide, oh, you guys have signed cows, all right, for one reason or another, then the people have a chance now to go the other alternative. But we're not yet there.
Why don't we just go the other alternative? Because we know how that's going to end.
Ask the question. There is the subject of IEBC that Wanjira you do not trust, but there's the aspect of, say, the council comes up with an IEBC that is in place.
Yes.
But there is the problem of that this IEBC might be interfered with by the big man at the top. So at the end of the day, is Fagia water for us to have a good IEBC that will then hear us all? That's what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah, because I'm saying the first duty of this transitional council would be a reconstitution of the IEBC. Then they could even accept this petition from the Free Kenyan movement. They could help us move, because right where we are at right now, where things are, we are still stuck with this pathetic system that we want to dismantle.
If anything comes very clear from this conversation, that there are two things that can be done, and that there is a coming together of voices whereby the one message is that there has to be something done. Something has to be done. Something has to change. The needle has to move. It's also clear that there seems to be a long time coming for these to continue.
Correct.
To get to the place where that needle will move.
Correct.
And it will shift.
I would love for you guys to run a poll about what they think. Yeah. Should we have a People's Transitional Council, or should we run a referendum?
Definitely one that needs to be looked into.
I think it's
And
not about popularity.
No, it's not about it's having the
hearing
people's
opinions.
voice.
It's hearing
It's
the
about
voices.
what do the people think, because we need them to weigh in on this. This is not
Because
me and you deciding.
for me, what is popular is that we have that transitional council. For me, that's what is popular. But what is logical is that we have a referendum.
I think hearing from people,
I'm
and
not going
I
with
think hearing from
popularity.
people will
I go
will
with
help
what
us
makes. For me, I
decide.
go with what makes logic.
let's
I think
hear what people have to
I think people are also logical.
I think what Wanjira is saying is a multi-track approach where you have legal, legislative, administrative, and last but not least, and more importantly, participatory. That's what you're saying.
Exactly, participatory, and people direct power and voice about this whole process.
And that brings us to the time where we have to end this conversation this morning. But I think that's a good idea, and it's something that we can actually do and hear what people have to say, and bring in the organized structure of it that you speak of, Bob. But I think it's very clear that we need to keep this discourse front and center. It needs to be alive to then figure out what people ought to do. But we want to thank you, both of you, for being here this morning. It's necessary that we do. Bob and Njagi and Wajiru, thank you for being here this morning and for extending this conversation to this hour on the Situation Room this Thursday.
You didn't give us a chance to say something that on the side with my sister and other progressives, we're organizing for alternative leadership, beyond even the referendum. Because as it is, we still have probably an election to face. Whether I'm not sure, nobody can tell whether we have what you're talking about will happen. But we have an election to face. That is in the Constitution. So we also need to organize ourselves so that we have different alternatives, either through this or through an election. Ruto must go.
Let's keep it.
Either through an election or through the uprising. Ruto must
go.
Thank you.
Asante sana.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.